Okay, hold on. Repeat that for me. I just started recording. I'm capturing every golden nugget you have.
Oh, sure. So I just signed off on my coffee table book. This one's a little rough because it was
Well, let's see that cover. Hold that up. Hold that bad boy up. I have been waiting for this for a long time. So,
this is a rough copy. So it's
oh
just
yeah,
approved.
sure. You got
It's just approved, but yeah.
wow. Where is that from? Where
The
did
photo
that cover? Yeah, the photo.
that is from Steinhatchee, Florida. That is
Steinhatchee, Florida.
Steinhatchee's your kind of place, Bob. It
Why?
is. It is way
Why?
off the map. Okay, so think of Florida. Think of
Okay.
Florida.
Okay.
You know, you think of like Miami, Tampa. That's about it, right? Or Orlando, of course.
Copy. Yeah.
This so like if you're looking at Florida, this is that little bend and the very corner of the state before it goes into the Panhandle.
Okay.
So
Got it.
it's what affectionately is called the Forgotten Coast.
The Forgotten
And
Coast.
Steinhatchee is just a little fishing camp, and it's a beautiful part of old Florida that's still left for now. You know?
Like St. Augustine, that kind of vibe.
No,
Not like that at all. No.
St. Augustine is all tourist.
Oh, it's all bougie.
St. Augustine. I mean, St. Augustine's great.
Yeah.
But Steinhatchee is much more laid back, fishing camp. You go there to the end of the road, and there might be 2 stop signs in the whole count or in the whole city. You know, yeah. I mean, it's laid back. It's known for fish, what they call fish. They call it fish, and it's known for scalloping.
I gotcha. Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to put that on my list, man. I love old, OG parts of the United States, or things a little slower and legit.
I guess that one's probably fairly close to you. That's Bend, Oregon.
Oh wow. Okay, so Bend, that's 6 hours to the west.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that way, well, I got to get you in my hometown, in my area, and shoot some of this beautiful Frank Church wilderness up here. Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for joining me today, Mark. And Mark and I have been friends for a number of years now already. I can't believe it's been probably 4 years now.
Like that, yeah.
Except really close to it. Mark and I have worked together. Mark is an absolutely outstanding commercial as well as landscape photographer. He captures so many. How would you describe your genre? Because I've seen everything that you've taken. Landscapes, you've done really important historical commissions and things like that. How would you classify your photography and your wheelhouse?
So I playfully say that I do just about any type of photography other than the bundled up baby photos, where they're all cutesy and swaddled up.
You're not that kind of guy.
But I don't know, since we got one on the way, that might be changing. I might just have to say I do everything.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way. I understand congratulations are in order. How many kids do you have, Mark, now, or one on the way?
2 stepsons, and this will be my first, biological child.
Wow! So you got the taste of all fatherhood and everything already. But I tell you what. Mm-hmm. Oh man, that's something else. Congrats.
We timed it perfectly so that the year that the kids that my youngest stepson graduates from high school will be the year that our youngest goes into kindergarten. So we're just going to be locked into school schedules for 30-something years.
Yeah, no empty nesting for you until you're basically going to be pushing the coffin. They'll, pretty much that's it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's something. It's interesting. I wanted to make sure that you and I connected. We've attempted before, and I wanted to make sure that we circle back around on the podcast, because I just am totally impressed with, one, your testimony in life and what you've done. And it all started with as far as your professional photography and where you started getting noticed was an image called Life in the River, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
right. Life in the River. And I'll put it on the screen, also links and everything. So tell us about your journey to the point where it flipped the switch and you became this world-renowned photographer. And I'm not exaggerating, audience. Mark's photography has been commissioned and used in a lot of places, so numerous, it would take another hour to list them on a podcast. I'll keep it brief, and I don't want to expand Mark's head any more than it is. So I'm just
I've
sharing
been
right now,
accused of
Mr.
having a pretty big
Bluebonnet.
forehead. I
Mr.
guess the
Mr.
head goes
Bluebonnet.
along with
Yeah, Mr. Bluebonnet. Anyway, so Mark, share with us your testimony to the point of when you said, "Okay, photography is my jam."
Oh gosh. So really with my testimony, I at one point I had I made a bad decision when I was 12, and I kept on that road for, 20 years, basically just living a life of addiction and bondage to drugs and alcohol. And I tried on my own to get clean, but I also sold uh, pills and all sorts of other drugs, and I was what they call getting high on my own supply, and I had a $500 a day habit, and I felt so lost and trapped in that cycle, because when you get addicted to opiates to the level I was, that there's no just easy coming off of that. Not even, you can't even go cold turkey and function in a week. You can't. Really, even 2 weeks just isn't feasible. And I needed a long term solution to kind of break that. Um, I was suicidal. I was just so stuck and lost in this enslavement to my vices there. Um, but I had a girlfriend back in the day who encouraged me to go to church. She was an addict too, but we went to church one day, and I just heard the pastor talking about he did his invitation at the end, and he basically, I felt like God was speaking through him to me to break those chains of addiction. And that day I went down and gave my life to the Lord. I was far from perfect then, and I still am. But the Lord was working in my life since that point. I was still an addict, and I got arrested 6 months later on some charges from before I even went into church. But sales charges, and I had a violation of probation at that point. And when I heard the charges, like, I knew I wasn't going to get out right away. Like, I knew I was going to serve some time, and I said, well, at least this is my chance to get clean. And I took that very seriously. Because I had tried on my own, and I felt just helpless, hopeless. And you know what? The Lord put me in just the right spot, even though I might not have seemed the right spot for me at the time. He put me in the right spot for what I needed at that time. And I just needed to unplug from society, and just when you're trying to overcome addiction, and you can be cold turkey, weak and thrown up and all that stuff. I had a $500 a day habit, like that. That's that level of degree of addiction there. And that's 20 years ago, well, 15 years ago, his dollars.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but like, I just couldn't. I had tried, but like, when everyone I knew did that sort of thing, and was asking me to connect them so they could go get high. Like it was a never ending cycle.
Mhm.
So fortunately, when I went to jail, that broke that. And I ended up serving about 15 months, 18-month sentence. And I got out and had this new outlook on life. I had lost my license due to a DUI. It was my third. I had 3 DUIs and a reckless, so I had lost my license for 6 years at that point because I had failed to submit to the breathalyzer the last time, so they added another year. But in 2014, January 5th, 2014, I was released from prison, and I went to Jacksonville, Florida. Had absolutely no idea, and had no idea what I was going to do. Hardly knew anybody other than the prison ministry, which are a great bunch of guys, but I knew no one but them, and had no idea how I was going to start over. Um, but you know what? God put the right people in my life at the right time, and allowed me to get a job. And there were trials, and there was circumstances that I thought were pretty tough. But you know what? The Lord gave me nothing I couldn't handle.
Yeah, man. 10
And
years.
I went to Florida Times Union, which is a newspaper in Jacksonville. I was in the shipping and receiving there, and when I left the prison ministry, I went to I got a house in a neighborhood where I could bike just 7 minutes to work. And a lot of people would say that not having a car is a huge hardship, and you know what, it is. It's a lot of society standards in the South, especially where there's not really good public transportation. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
it is. And you
Mhm.
know what, there was times where I would have to bike in the rain to get to work and all that. But you
Mhm.
know what, the Lord also used that as an opportunity to open doors, to discover just how beautiful this world is, to discover how beautiful Jacksonville is. I had a new lease on life. I was it was the first time in 20 years I'd been clean and sober. I had a huge appreciation for the life I was given, and still do. Um, but, you know, I had to be at work by 7 in the morning, and along that bicycle ride, I would just start taking photos with my cell phone of the river, and the river walk and downtown off in the distance. And one thing kind of led to another, and a friend at Times Union gave me a camera, so I learned how to use that. And one of those places was at Memorial Park, which is where Life in the River was taken. I'd seen Memorial Park the day I was released from prison, and I knew when I saw it, like, this is the neighborhood I want to be in,
Mhm.
because it was beautiful, and it was inspiring. I took my wife there on our first date, just because it's a beautiful place. And you know what, like, at the time I didn't have a lot of money, so it was also a cheap date. I think she got the coffee and I brought the um you know
Cool.
but so when Hurricane Irma hit, so like, now I got released in 2014. I had been pursuing my photography career a little bit. I was still very much getting on my feet. um but I knew it was a passion of mine, so I had started my business in 2016. And then when Hurricane Irma hit, and I saw waves crashing over the sculpture, and just the damage in the park, I knew I had to do whatever I could to capture that. And I took maybe 300 photos of different angles of the sculpture and
Mm.
different waves crashing over, and just that one really stood out. And kind of launched a career, opened a lot of doors where people wanted to hear about how I took the photo and all that. But much much more important than how I took that photo is the story leading up to it about how God saved me from a life of just bondage and slavery to those addictions and gave me a life worth living. You know, and
Man, that's amazing.
that's just a big part of that.
Just amazing testimony. You wrote self-published your own book.
Yep.
That tells about that, and I'll put the link to that, and of course your website, and so that people could take a deeper dive. And just a quick question: the prison ministry, was it Prison Fellowship or
Prisoners of Christ.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Right,
So, one of the things was when I was in the last 6 months of prison, like I was at kind of like a halfway, well, not a halfway house, but like a transition prison, a short-term prison where they would have people come in and talk about different halfway houses and what they could offer and all that. And I kept hearing this theme of like, well, when you get out, you got to get a job within 2 weeks and pay us within 2 weeks, or else you're going to be out on the streets. And I was just thinking, like, man, I don't know anybody in Jacksonville. Here I am, a newly released felon. Like I don't know. Like that seems like a lot on my table to figure out in 2 weeks. And Prisoners of Christ, fortunately, they showed God's mercy and grace on me and many other people going through the program. Helped us with jobs, to find jobs like career placement and all that. Didn't force you to pay rent until you actually had a job, which is a big deal.
Wow,
Big
yeah.
deal. So, I thought I had a job a month after I got released, and the day before I was supposed to start it, like I had been told for 2 weeks that I was getting this job. And the day before, I got this email from their lawyers saying that basically they couldn't hire me. But I had been upfront about everything in my past, and that kind of took me on a dark turn for a minute. But the Lord brought me through that, and they found me another job, and that was at the Times Union, and the rest is history.
Right.
But if anyone is getting released in the state of Florida or has family that's getting released in the state of Florida, I highly encourage them to check out Prisoners of Christ. They're a great ministry.
I'll drop that in the show notes as well. So let's fast forward then, and now it's 10 years. And you've built an unbelievable portfolio, really world acclaimed portfolio, and you're publishing a portfolio book, which I wanted to hear about just a second. We'll get there in a second, but there's something you had just finished up over this summer, or it started last year, and it's called Main Street, Florida, or
Yep.
Main Street Florida. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what just to give everybody a dose of the types of commissions and the things that you do?
Oh, sure. Well, that was a very exciting project because one of my favorite things to do, and it might drive Kristen, my wife, or my family in general crazy sometimes, but when we go on road trips, I have to stop and photograph anything remotely interesting. So I'm really good at turning a 7-hour trip into a 14-hour trip. I'm real good at that.
Right.
But basically, the state of Florida, through the Secretary of State and the Florida Main Street program, put out a bid for entries to photograph all the Main Street communities. And in Florida, there's 56 of them. So for Main Street, basically, these are little downtown organizations that are encouraging tourism, commerce, historic charm in a community, things that make a place unique, things that make a place special, cultural relevance, anything like that. And so I had the honor of, over this spring, going to all 56 Florida Main Street communities and photographing them, capturing. I essentially got to play tourist in a sense. I had kind of a list of things to photograph, but then also like I went above and beyond and just, whatever I thought was cool, I would just go photograph and really take my time, take a few hours at least in every community. I mean, sometimes I'd like to spend a day if I had it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but you gotta, when you're photographing 56 communities across the state of Florida with weather and all that in mind, you gotta.
Especially Florida weather, boy.
Yeah, I got very, very fortunate. I started my really shooting heavily in March and April, and it was beautiful weather 98% of the time, and not too hot, and for me that was great.
Mm, yeah.
But absolutely a fascinating program. And, I also have a link to some of those photos from that on my website. So I
Oh,
can,
great. So people will see them. That's really
yeah, like
cool.
specific examples is kind of some of my more artistic photos from that project. But it was really cool because like I got to meet with a whole bunch of different executive directors of their Main Street programs, understand what was important to them,
Mm,
understand what they really wanted to focus on, and things of relevance to their community that I just wouldn't know otherwise.
right. Right. And you just got back on some personal time in Europe with your family.
Yep.
And was that specifically where you're referencing earlier that you have to take twice as long probably in Europe because it was only scheduled for like 4 or 5 days or a week, and it was 2 weeks because you took an extra week just to shoot every ant, every crack and crevice, and along the way? Where did you go, and what and how was it?
So turning the seven
How many
hours into the
photos did you
14.
take? That's a marker. How many photos did you take?
Oh, hold on. I sent this to
The
someone.
only reason I
I
asked
made a
is,
whole I
yeah,
made a whole list. I will get
for
back
sure.
to that.
Okay. The only reason
But
I ask is Mark does professional work for me in some of my business dealings. He's done that unbelievably, doing large events and capturing just the right moments and the essence of the events for branding and marketing and so forth. And I'm surprised of how many photos I don't get that don't pass the muster. He probably shoots like 5,000, 6,000 photos, and I get like 3,000 of them. But he just is a shooting madman, and they're all great, but they all have like subtle nuances that only a professional's eye can pick. Where I'm like, man, that's awesome. Like, no, it's a little off. I'm gonna recolor it, and it's just like, yeah, that kind of thing. But
so to answer your question about the traveling, so so I'm really good at turning a 7 hour drive into a 14-hour drive. That relates to our drives from North Carolina back to Florida, because I will try to
okay.
stop through every podunk town in Georgia and see what I can see. And that's gotten me in trouble with with some speed traps a couple times, but so okay, I found the list of our trip this last time, and
Yeah,
here's my list. I'm going to rattle off to you:
sure.
33,076 unedited photos, 9,646 edited photos, 19 days, 13 castles, 11 airport stops, 4 countries, 4 hotels, 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, 2 Michelin star restaurant, 2 rental cars on the wrong side of the road, 1 birthday, 1 Olmsted Park, which Olmsted's the guy who did the his sons did Memorial Park, and Olmsted did Central Park. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of a nerd about that.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of old stuff, and all the wonderful memories made.
That's sweet. That's great. It sounds like a book entry, blog post or another
Uh-huh,
third book,
uh-huh.
third book, right? That's
um,
awesome. I mean, you're so busy. How do you, how do you kind of maintain balance professionally and in your, professionally in your personal life? Because you're all from Florida and you've got Texas roots and you live in the Carolinas but you travel around the world and, you do so many unique things. You got one on the way two also. So yeah, how do you balance that process? I mean,
I mean, trying your best to plan for the long term,
sure.
and you want to make God laugh, plan something, but when there's been opportunities that arise, we've certainly hopped on it.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, like the photo that went viral just over a month before Kristen and I got married. So like very much in the whole time we've been married, I've been building a business. I've been building, my reputation as a photographer and doing excellent work and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, that took a little more attention and time than I'd care to admit. I wish I could have more balance just between family life and that. We moved to the Carolinas with the intention of slowing that down just a little bit, not being so busy. And what I love that Kristen's told me a few times since we moved up here. We've been up here about 2 years now, and she says, "When you're here, you're here." I'm
Mm-hmm.
not that's not just like me editing nonstop, me going to the next job. Like, yes, I have work up here, but it's not at the pace of Florida. And I mean, yes, I still go back to Florida for work, but you know, it's much more balanced up here, and it's not perfect. But we also understand what are my busy months normally. Like, we know April and October, just those are crazy months. Don't try to fill me up with a bunch of activities to do, because we just, I mean, if those are the months to really be busy, okay. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we just kind of have accepted that. Um, but I am blessed with being able to take some time off from going to Florida when Kristen has a baby. So I won't be back there until really after. Well, I guess right around same time I go to Denver.
You're going to
So,
Denver to shoot an event.
yeah.
Yeah, that's something else. I've always just wondered. Earlier in my career, I spent an awful lot of time on an airplane around the United
Mhm.
States and in Europe on business and stuff. And being a young dad, my father had passed away when I was relatively young, right? Or like freshman in high school. So it's just kind of figuring out what is this whole thing about. And so nobody really gives you a playbook about how to be a dad, how to balance a wife, unless you have somebody mentoring you, you've seen it and witnessed it. But if you don't come up through that, you're kind of making it up as you go,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out, you can read as many books, and now you got YouTube and, men's groups and things like that. But it's, I wish at some point I had been more cognizant of it, because I thought this is the time when we make money. So we're making money. And internally, I thought, I'm doing it for you, family. But then I look back at it now, the kids are all grown up and getting married and things of that nature, thinking like, man, if I could just bottle, did I really need to go to New York that one trip, 4 days,
Mhm.
5 days? Did I need to bag out? But, hindsight's 2020. I don't think it's a regret. I don't think in the situations where you have Zoom now and all these types of things, it wasn't around back then. So
Sure.
you kind of reflect on that. What's one thing that you reflect on early, just in the last 10 years after you flipped the switch, right? And you got out. What's one thing that has been a wrestle with you in parenting or maybe being an early husband and trying to figure out your way while you're being married, growing a business? You're building a personal brand, Mark.
Yeah.
You are the brand, right? It's not
Yeah.
like you work for a company, you put the company on the shelf and you have an assistant or whatever that is. You are the brand. You
Yeah.
have to be going like this to put money and food on the table, especially in the early days, right?
And just going this is such a small part of actually running a business and
Yeah.
answering the emails and sending the invoices and researching, different things to do for your business, and strategizing and all that. So, and then that's one of those things where it's like, even when I was home, I wasn't really there a lot of times mentally, because I would
Mm.
be focused on something else.
Brain turning, the wheels turning all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too different for a lot of men that I've interviewed or spoken with. I
So
think we're there physically at that age, and because we don't have the framework, or maybe we're hyped up into what we're trying to do and accomplish, or feel the pressures around us. I don't know. Do you want to unpack that one for
I
you?
I feel at some point, like, that's just how God's built me and a lot of other men. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things I struggle with up here in the mountains is, like, when I do have downtime and we're not doing something with the family or whatever, like, it's hard for me to not to like be in the moment and not just think of, like, oh, how can I grow my business? How do I need to go do something to reach out to someone to network and get more
Yeah.
jobs? Like, is it
Idle
going to be
hands.
okay?
These hands got to be doing something, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. I think that's a little more acute right now because of the baby on the way.
Mm.
I
Mm.
need to be responsible in different areas. Fortunately, the life we've lived as a family, we are secure as far as like housing and all that goes. Like, we've built, a good foundation on that sense of security.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that you don't still have bills to pay. you know?
Right. Exactly.
So it's a tough balance, and it's one you have to like constantly check and evolve and communicate,
Mm.
and just see what's working and what's not. You know,
Yeah.
but as far as like one like regret, especially from the early days, yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, because, like, you are driven to provide, and at that time it was a very, like, we weren't sure how it was gonna work out, as far as the finances and all that. But hindsight 2020, like, I wish I would have been there a little bit more in the moment for my wife and the kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've gone through so much, and an amazing testimony. And I mean, now to the level of professionalism where you are in your field, and looking backwards, how do you define success now at this stage in your life?
Balance.
Unpack that one, buddy.
Balance. There's different kinds of wealth. Yes, there's financial wealth, but that is not, like, that might be what society says you need, but at the end of the day, for me, if the family's provided for, I don't need to have all the money I can possibly grasp at. I don't need to be solely focused on that, but being more balanced as far as your time, your commitments in the community. Not saying I'm perfect at those things, but it's something I'm trying to be more engaged with.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is wealth. I mean, the ability to go do what you want, but also have the time to do it. Like, I mean, I think of people who, like, work all their lives, and then once they retire, they plan to do all their travels and all that, and then something happens, and they're not able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, a lot of my traveling is business expenses, so that works out. But having balance in the family, in your leisure, but also your business. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a tough thing, and everyone's different with it. With your
Yeah.
patience and all that. But being like when I got away from those addictions years ago, like I had to be honest with myself. I had to
Mm.
be honest with what the triggers were in my life. Like, I can go out and I can shoot an event that has alcohol, and people can offer me alcohol and all that. And it's not going to phase me because I know, like, I had to be honest with myself that, hey, if I have one drink, not today, not tomorrow, but a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, I'll either
Mhm.
be in prison or I'll be dead.
Mm.
And that's just how I look at it. Now, one thing I will not do is have alcohol in the house. Like that's a big no-no for me. Like I just
Mhm.
cuz I don't ever want to have like the case where I just say screw it and go do that. You
Yeah.
know, like
Proximity.
if I'm mad or something, like if I'm upset or frustrated or whatever, I don't
Mhm.
want that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um so that's being honest with myself about that. But in the same thread of that thought, being honest with yourself at any time in life, what is important to you? What's important to your family? What do you want to do? You have one life. How do you want to live it? Like, um, you know, and that's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's very encouraging, Mark. And I think there's so many little breadcrumb tips there that you were, laying out for everybody. I agree. The proximity. Myself, like the alcohol, um, 2 months ago, I said I'm just not going to have any drinks. Not going to have any beer. Not going to have a whiskey at night. Traveling, business travel, all that stuff, which was very easy.
Sure,
And
it's real
here we
easy.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, super easy, all the pressures. And so I'm on my beginning of my journey to, abstain from that. And good Lord's given me a lot of courage in the process. But you can do it. And there are others that are much more severe, that really have an addiction to alcohol and so forth, or substances, as you had mentioned in your early portions of your life. And so there are different treatments and things that you can do to be able to engage in that. So I feel like I've dodged a bullet because I see, we all have friends of years gone by that succumbed deeply and are completely off the radar now. And, they're,
The
they're in their 40s and 50s and look like they're 90s and they're on respirators. You know what I'm saying? It's something like that. But
my
so,
my ex who went to church with me and everything that time, she's overdosed and died.
mm, it's
Another
horrible.
ex I had overdosed and died. Numerous people. And I want to say, Bob, congratulations on 2 months for that. That's hey, that's awesome. Like if you set your mind to it and you wanted to change, even if you felt it wasn't the
Yeah.
biggest thing in the world, like that's big. Like that's nothing to shortchange. Like that's a big
Awesome.
deal. So
Well,
you
I
know,
appreciate it.
let me just
It's
say,
the
you can
social
always
function.
reach out to me, and
I appreciate it.
I'll
No,
be
I
glad.
appreciate it. I think, my wife's been great and family and, the friends are supportive. And, I just said, I got to do this for my health. I got to be here. I've walked my daughter down the aisle. So check that box. It was early for me. It was like, I got to be able to get so I can walk my daughter down the aisle. We did that this year. So now what's the next? I got to be here for the grandbabies that are coming, down the road. You know
Mm,
what I mean? I want to be the jacked grandpa. Yeah, it's that
okay.
it's that kind of. But I've kind of adopted some of that mindset that I'm in progress on. So, but thank you for the encouragement. You're
Oh,
so well read and you're traveled. You're definitely traveled and read, and you master of your field, Mark. Just this last year, okay, 12 months. You could
mhm.
say 2024. You go just outside the boundaries of a year if you wanted to. Is there one thing that you've learned that or witnessed or learned that has shape shifted or changed your perspective on something?
Yes. Don't speed in Georgia.
Yeah. Are you a wanted man? You got to go via Alabama to get to the Carolinas now or something like that
So,
because
so
you're just wanted in 2 states, Georgia being one of them.
I got my so Georgia has for decades, they have policed vigorously the state lines of Floridians crossing into Georgia to go to the mountains of North Carolina, and
Okay.
likewise
Yeah.
on the side of North Carolina heading into Georgia, it's the same way, and all
Sure.
through the highways there. I
Yeah.
did not realize until I got my North Carolina driver's license, and I got a ticket a month later in Georgia that North Carolina laws are not like Florida laws. Florida, you get a couple points on your record, you pay your fine, you go about your day. Here in North Carolina, I got a letter saying that oh, you were caught speeding in another state, and because you were going over 15 miles, I was going 17 miles over, according to the officer, which that's a whole nother story. But I agreed to 17 miles an hour, and that's what I went through in the court and all that. Well, North Carolina Department of Transportation said I was going to lose my license for 6 months.
Nope.
And as much traveling as I do, that was a big wake up call. I had to fight with the courts for a year. North Carolina courts. I've never been pulled over in North Carolina. For the record, in Florida, I have a pretty good driving record since I got my license back. I mean, I think I got 2 tickets in 10 years. And then I managed to get well, yeah, I got 2 tickets in Georgia in the course of like 6 months. um,
You're like
but
a you're
but
like
one
a
one
honey
was
and
in
bees or
Florida, like one was under a Florida license and it didn't matter. But in
okay.
North Carolina, they just do not play about that. So I have respectfully slowed myself down quite a bit. And when I'm in Georgia, I have a whole different perspective of how I approach this great state of Georgia.
10-2 and
Uh huh.
yeah, I'm
Uh
sure.
huh.
Oh, that's up to
Um, you
oh
know,
boy, that's
I,
something. So, any
I,
particular highway you want to give our listeners, any of your Florida listeners, Georgia listeners, you're crossing the great state
um,
lines there?
don't go
Highway
off. Don't
95,
go
is that
off
the
the.
east?
Don't go off the interstate.
Stay
Like
on
if.
the interstate.
Yep. I mean, the interstate's bad, but as long as you're going like 10 over or less than that, they're not going to mess with you. I
Copy
don't.
that.
I don't think so, in my professional opinion.
Mm,
um, you know, uh, but on those back roads, they have all sorts of crazy speed traps.
mm,
And lots of small towns do.
sure, sure.
Now, my dad's still alive. You know, uh, like you though, I didn't grow up with him in the house.
Mm,
My parents got divorced when I was 10 or 11, something like that.
mm.
So I'd see him, once a month or something like that. But like I do remember my dad having a lead foot. So, I guess that just kind of ran in the family, even though I don't want to admit it. But,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, that's
uh,
something. Well, thanks for that. I'm going to zig and zag here a little bit as we get kind of close to the end of our time together. Tell us about the new coffee table book. When is it coming out? What's your POV on it? What is it called? What are the contents? Obviously photos, but put it in context for us.
sure. So the name of the coffee table book is Photographic Memory.
Okay.
And basically, how I came about that is I can't tell you what I did yesterday a lot of the time. I'm terrible with names for people I've met numerous times, and I really should remember their names. I'm just terrible at it. But you know what? I can look at a photo from 6, 7 years ago, and I can remember what the weather conditions were like, what the lighting was. I can remember a story right along with it
Mm,
that accompanied the photo. I can tell you the settings that I used. And like so that was kind of a play on words of the photographic memory. You know,
Mm,
no, I don't have true photographic memory. I'm not claiming that, but that's
mhm,
my little play on that. But it's it's I've done so many different types of photography in the fine art, landscape, seascape, cityscape sort of areas that I felt it was time to do a book and tell some of those stories.
mhm.
So I'm working with my dream team down in Florida, some creative geniuses, and I'll gladly call them that because they're awesome at what they do. Um, but we've been working on this book for golly, I've been working on it for a year and a half. They've been working on it for about 6 months, and we just sent it off to printer. It should be here early December. Uh,
Okay. Pre-sales,
hoping
pre-sales
time.
for Christmas, pre-sales for
What?
Christmas,
Yeah,
pre-sales for Christmas.
that's right. We'll-
Cool. See?
I'll get you. I'll get you a link to some pre-sales. I got you. I got you. Um, but yeah, so it's broken up into different categories: seascapes, cityscapes. A little bit of my travels. Lots of old barn photos and just the rural countryside and some of those spots in Georgia that I just mentioned are so hazardous to my driving record. Um, but a lot of those travels make it in the book, and
Cool.
like you say, it's like I take so many photos, so it's hard for even a team of us to narrow it down
Oh, I'm
to
sure.
our favorite 400 or 300 or whatever, but we have, and I'm very pleased with it. I was able to get in a little bit of my trip to Ireland and England and all that, so a little bit of that will be in the book, amongst other things, and should be awesome. It will retail $49.95, and
Good price point for a big coffee table book like that. Yeah, especially
uh,
the quality of
yeah,
the
oh
book.
yeah.
So yeah, well, I'm excited for you, and I can't wait until you open a gallery because you're going to be my first gallery client. Anytime you
Well,
open your own photo client, photo gallery.
well, as we were talking about, how life looks and adjusting to what life is like now. I mean, it's been on my heart to open some sort of gallery studio space here in Franklin.
Yes.
I don't have anything in the works right now, but it's been on my heart. So if God opens the door, we'll see what happens. But I would love to have my art in space where I could also do like studio type shots, but then also like teach photography because, I mean, in Florida, I
Perfect.
did pretty good with that. So, I mean, I think a mixture of a few different things in a space would be awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, put that on top of mind. I think that's great. I always ask a couple different questions here about our halftime and our playbooks. What would you piece of advice would you give to your younger self now?
Oof. Like way younger self?
Well, let's call it like 18, 20, at 20.
Oh, well, 20 is a tough age because my mom was killed in an accident a
Mm.
month, not even a month after I turned 20. Um,
Oh boy, sorry.
so kind of like you with your dad, like I had to grow up quick at that point. Like
Mm.
my dad wasn't around in Florida, like he was elsewhere. And I mean, by that time, and I'm an adult, but like I'm very much, an addict. I'd already built that foundation of addiction.
Mm.
Um, and I don't regret anything I did, like because it made me who I am today. But if I had to tell myself something, I'd say get off the drugs before they ruin the next 10 years of your life. You know, um, but it made me stronger today. you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, if I hadn't had those trials, would I have the beliefs I have today? Would I have the appreciation of life for having a second chance at life as I have today? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no,
easy
it's
to think
kind of,
about the what ifs, but a knee jerk reaction would be get off the drugs.
yeah, get early and do it. It's fun while you're doing it, but it could have gone another way for you, Mark.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's so much the substance, it's the experience and the situation that you're in could have just gone so south.
uh huh.
Yeah, I think that's listen up, audience. Do it earlier than later.
Yep.
Move, flee.
That's right.
I understand that. I can totally understand that. Um, Last question for you. What kind of legacy do you hope to leave in your life?
One of sharing beauty with everyone I come across. Um, One that has never been afraid to share what the Lord's done in my life. One that has been a joy to be around. I know that's not always an easy thing to say or do
I
with every.
know. I've been around you. It's like, woo.
Uh huh. But a legacy of beauty in whatever way you want to take that, whether it's the photos, whether it's a wonderful family that we've built, um, you know, just to have that to appreciate and carry on. And now that I got a baby on the way, hey, that's even more important.
Well said. A legacy of beauty and love.
Yep.
Mark Krancer, international photographer, dear friend, and thank you so much.